Before we begin, I invite you to leave in the comments where you're watching from and the exact time at which you're listening to this narration. We're interested to know in which places and at what times of day or night these documented accounts reach. You're too slow. You're fired. The foreman's voice boomed across the construction site, dripping with the kind of contempt reserved for things deemed utterly useless. Her only crime had been her meticulous, methodical work, a standard of excellence she refused to compromise in a world that valued speed over substance. But what that arrogant foreman, a man who saw only schedules and bottom lines didn't know, was that her slow work was the only thing that would save the city from a catastrophic failure. He didn't know that the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers was about to make her a legend. Maya Jimenez was a ghost in a world of loud men and roaring machinery. At 38, she was the only female welder on the massive, sprawling crew for the new Northwood Bridge project, a fact that made her a constant, low-grade target for ridicule and condescension. Her colleagues, men with thick arms and thicker skulls, had nicknamed her the Turtle. They would rush through their jobs, their welding torches spitting and hissing, leaving behind sloppy, pitted welds that were quickly hidden under a coat of industrial-grade paint. Their speed earned them praise and backslapping approval from the foreman, a brutish, perpetually angry man named Riggs. Maya, however, worked with a different rhythm, a different philosophy. Her torch moved with the steady, unwavering precision of a surgeon making a critical incision. Each weld she laid was a perfect, seamless ribbon of molten steel, a work of art that was as strong as it was beautiful. This wasn't just a job for her. It was a sacred trust, a code of conduct burned into her very soul. Before she was a civilian welder in a hard hat, she had been a U.S. Navy Seabee, one of the elite construction battalions renowned for building and fighting in the most hostile environments on Earth. She had learned to weld on the pitching, rolling decks of warships in the middle of the ocean, where a single failed weld could mean the difference between life and death for an entire crew. She had been taught by grizzled masters that you don't just build things, you build them to withstand the very worst the world can throw at you. That military-grade standard was a part of her, as inseparable from her identity as the small, faded Navy Seabee's tattoo on her forearm. Her foreman, Riggs, had no such code. His only standard was the bottom line, his only god the project schedule. He saw Maya's methodical, careful pace not as a mark of professionalism, but as a drag on his timeline and a direct threat to his performance bonus. "This ain't a nuclear submarine, Jimenez." He'd often bark at her, his voice echoing across the steel girders. "It's a bridge. Slap it together and move on. Time is money." Every day was a silent battle of wills. Her co-workers would race to finish their sections, their work fast, ugly, and barely up to code. Maya would follow, her pace deliberate, her focus absolute, her work impeccable. She wasn't just connecting steel beams. She was weaving a shield, a silent promise of safety to the thousands of faceless commuters who would one day cross this bridge, trusting it with their lives. One Friday afternoon, the pressure reached its breaking point. A regional inspector was due for a surprise visit, and Riggs was in a frantic panic, rushing around the site like a madman. He stormed over to Maya's station, where she was carefully preparing a critical support joint, cleaning the steel meticulously before making her first pass. "What in God's name are you still doing on this section?" he roared, his face turning a dangerous shade of red. "The other guys finished their joints an hour ago. They're already on the next span. You're costing me money, Turtle." Maya looked up, her face calm and unreadable behind her welding mask. "This is a primary load-bearing joint, Mr. Riggs," she stated, her voice steady and professional. "The engineering specs require a multi-pass, high-penetration technique to ensure structural integrity under stress. It has to be perfect." Riggs's face contorted with fury. He saw her adherence to protocol not as a commitment to safety, but as a direct challenge to his authority. "I am the authority here," he spat, "and I say it's good enough. We don't have time for perfect." He then did something that made the whole crew stop and stare. He spat a wad of chewing tobacco onto her perfectly prepped, gleaming steel seam. "This is construction, not art class." He then pointed a trembling sausage-like finger at her. "You're too slow." "You're fired. Pack your gear and get off my site." Now Maya didn't flinch. She simply powered down her torch with a deliberate click, her expression hidden behind the dark glass of her mask. She had been fired for doing her job right. As she walked away, carrying her heavy gear, some of the men snickered, their laughter echoing the foreman's ignorance. They saw a slow worker getting what she deserved. They had no idea they had just witnessed the dismissal of their guardian angel. But you won't believe this. 2 weeks later, the earth itself rendered its final terrible judgment. A massive 6.7 magnitude earthquake, the strongest in the state's recorded history, ripped through the region. Buildings crumbled into dust. Roads cracked and buckled like cheap plastic. The city was plunged into chaos, devastation, and darkness. The new Northwood Bridge, which had been rushed to a premature completion after Maya was fired, was hit by the full violent force of the tremor. In the frantic aftermath, as the sun rose on a ruined city, news helicopters hovered over the landscape of destruction. The footage was heartbreaking. But amidst the widespread catastrophic failure, the cameras began to focus on a miracle, an impossibility. The Northwood Bridge was a mangled, twisted wreck of steel and concrete, except for one section. A single 50-foot span on the western approach stood completely, defiantly intact. A lone island of order in a vast sea of chaos. The rest of the bridge had collapsed into the churning river below, but this one section, held aloft by its support tower, had not even buckled. He hadn't seen the biggest surprise yet. On the ground, rescue teams and shell-shocked engineers were baffled. It defied all logic. As emergency crews worked to clear the debris, a convoy of olive-drab vehicles from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers arrived. Leading them was Colonel Davenport, a man with a legendary, almost mythical reputation for understanding structural failure. He walked the length of the ruined bridge, his expert eyes taking in every snapped cable and fractured beam with a grim expression. Then he arrived at the section that was still standing. He ran his hand over the steel joints, his expression changing from grimness to a mixture of confusion and profound awe. He turned to the disgraced and terrified foreman, Riggs, who had been called to the scene. "Who welded this section?" the colonel demanded, his voice sharp and precise. Riggs, seeing a fleeting chance to save himself, was about to take the credit. "That was my crew, sir. But before he could finish his pathetic lie, one of the younger welders, his face pale with guilt and shame, stepped forward. "No, sir," he said quietly, his voice trembling. That was Maya Jimenez, the woman he fired for being too slow. And it was at this exact moment that everything changed. Colonel Davenport's eyes narrowed. He pulled a small, powerful flashlight from his belt and examined the welds up close, running his fingers over the flawless seams. A slow smile of recognition, of deep and profound respect spread across his face. "Of course," he whispered to himself. He turned back to Riggs, his voice now like cold steel. "You fired her? For this?" He pointed to the perfect seamless weld. "This isn't just a weld, Mr. Riggs. This is a signature. This is a U.S. Navy certified high-stress structural weld, the kind used on the hulls of nuclear submarines. It's designed to withstand pressures you can't even imagine. It's slow because it's perfect. The rest of your bridge collapsed into that river because your crew's work was fast, sloppy, and criminally inadequate. This section is standing because a true professional, a true artist, did her job. She didn't just build a bridge, she built a monument to competence. You didn't fire a slow worker, you fired the only person on this site who actually knew what they were doing." Riggs was utterly destroyed, his incompetence and greed laid bare for the world to see. Colonel Davenport didn't waste another second on him. "Find her," he ordered his aide. "Find Maya Jimenez. Tell her the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers has a job for her." They found Maya volunteering at a local disaster relief shelter, quietly helping to build temporary housing for those who had lost their homes. The colonel didn't offer her a job as a welder. He offered her a position as the new head of quality control and structural integrity for all critical infrastructure projects in the state. Her first task, to supervise the complete rebuilding of the Northwood Bridge, this time to her standards and hers alone. Her signature, the one her boss had spat on, was now the gold standard for an entire state. Her quiet, unwavering commitment to doing the job right had not only been vindicated, it had saved countless lives, becoming a silent steel testament to the enduring power of true military-grade honor. Kindness and merit are recorded even when they go unnoticed. To continue hearing stories that prove it, don't forget to follow the Merit Ledger and leave a comment about a time when a small act of kindness made a huge difference, because every life is a record worth reading.